We are back on Morning Line. With us this morning talking about the legal aspect of the coronavirus is medical malpractice attorney Clint Kelly. He's joining us live on Skype, and it's good to have Clint with us. Clint, we're going to take a few phone calls for you, and we're going to start off with one of our regulars. Always has a question for you, and that would be Joe. Joe, good morning. Clint's standing by. He can hear you. What's your question?
Okay, 2 or 3 comments I'd like Mr. Kelly to address. We was totally unprepared and inadequate for this virus to happen. And they knew several weeks in advance that it was going on in other countries on these cruise ships and in other countries. Second thing is, we went awful slow about making any progress with this stuff. Our leaders are telling some good stories, but it's still snowballing, and it's not any help being done. And the third thing is, I know for a fact that some of our state workers that has to be involved with people every day, they don't even have masks and stuff to protect themselves. So they're telling some good stories, but we're moving awful slow, and we would, it just, I don't know, we're not making no progress with it. And we knew a lot, several weeks before that this was coming. So we need to do something to be prepared for this kind of stuff in the future.
Clint, not much of a question there, but I think a statement kind of echoing what you said earlier in terms of whether clearly, and the medical community, just not prepared for this. And I'm not just talking about locally, but nationally, when we probably should have seen the signs.
Well, Joe speaks the truth. I mean, look, Nick, this is one of the unusual situations. We've been watching this train wreck happen in real time, all of us. I mean, I've been telling my wife for weeks that this response that we have used is inadequate. I think people know that in their gut, that it hasn't been done right, for those who believed in it, and those who believed that this was real. And you could see what was happening in Italy and know instantly it was real. It's just been amazing to me, the most scientifically adept country with all the money we have, and watching this thing happen like it's happening, it just breaks your heart. And then to see this morning, we saw the curve that came from the White House, the so-called best scenario curve versus the worst case scenario curve. I mean, I just don't get it, Nick. I'll say this, though, the medical community, and particularly the one here, that's the only one I can speak to because, like I said, I got a relative in it, they've done a good job. They've done what they can do with what they have. The absence of testing, the absence of personal protective gear, that's not their fault. They can only work with what they can work with. The fault that I assign, and I'm looking back now to the Gallatin nursing home and other places, is the opportunity when they could get personal protective gear and they didn't, or when they could have supplied it to their employees and they didn't. And they're going to have to answer for that. And they're not going to be the only ones who are going to have to answer for that.
When you talk about when they didn't, I wonder if in cases like that, the reason, what do you imagine, I'm just asking you to theorize here, that they didn't, were they among those who early on, and it started with the president early on, who didn't think this was a big deal. He's certainly come around since, but that maybe they didn't do what they should have done early on because they simply didn't think it was a big deal? Or do you think it was apathy? Was it that they didn't want to spend the money to do it right? What could the reasons be?
Well, Nick, just look at the mixed messages. I mean, again, this is something that's common to everyone. I'm no expert on this, but think about it. When you're reading what was going on in China and what was going on in Italy, and our government, the top of our government's telling us it was a hoax, when that type of mixed messaging gets out at the beginning, that's when people are most open to understanding what the truth is. You've got half the public who are taking this seriously and the other half who aren't. Now, you're right. The president now is taking it seriously. He doesn't have a choice. But think of the days and the weeks, and frankly, I look as months, lost at the beginning, when if people had taken this seriously and people had shut down early, think of how much flatter that curve would be. And it's not just the deaths that would have been minimized. Think of the money, Nick. What's going to be trillions of dollars lost because we're sitting around doing nothing, in my judgment, in a prolonged way, where we could have been, hopefully, if things had been done right, might have gone back to work earlier. That's just, there's going to be plenty of time down the road for investigations, recriminations, things like that. But Joe's right. I agree with Joe 100%, and we've watched this train wreck happen in real time.
Yeah, it's absolutely awful. It's hard to just, go back and remember that some people at one point were claiming the coronavirus was some kind of political ploy to hurt the president. I'm sorry. I mean, and that's what was causing the delay, and people didn't want to believe it, and now we're in this pickle. It's not a partisan issue. It's a health issue that affects every single one of us. It doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It's going to kill you if you don't address it.
Right.
All right, let's go to Ann next. Let's go to Ann. Ann, good morning. Go ahead, Ann. What's on your mind?
Good morning. March 1st, or the first week of March, 3 of my family members and I were all scheduled for mammograms. I was told, even though I had already undergone several breast surgeries, I needed to wait. I had 2 sisters that were allowed to have them and 1 sister-in-law. One sister's already had her biopsy and part of a breast removed. That's in Murfreesboro. One sister's already gotten a clean bill of health. My sister-in-law was found to have a breast lump and told, you've got to wait an entire month before your biopsy. Hers was done yesterday. She had to wait a month. If that turns out to be cancer, and I've been told, even though you've already had part of a breast removed, even though you've already had 3 other breast surgeries, you're not eligible for your mammogram. You have to wait. If it's another 3 months or 4 months or 5 months for me, where do those lawsuits fall in the future? Because that's what piecemeal doing is happening across this country.
Interesting question, Clint. Again, I understand why they're trying to put off all but emergency surgeries, but look, she could have a cancer and she's not going to be able to find out because she can't get the biopsy.
Nick, I'm so glad Ann called because I would have forgotten to mention this if she had not brought it up. You're going to have loads of cases of what I call wrongful delay. These are a wrongful postponement. These are patients who actually had a procedure that was necessary and urgent, and they were instead thrown into the hopper with the rest of the so-called elective cases. And those people are going to get injured, and some are going to die because the healthcare provider in charge of their care misjudged it. And there are going to be reasons why some of these cases were misjudged. And I don't want to get into too much more than what I know because I've got an investigation going right now and I have to determine the results of it before I talk about it on air. But let's just say this. You may find in the future there are cases where surgeons denied treatment to certain patients because their procedure wouldn't bring enough money in versus other procedures that were very, very lucrative. And they went forward and found a way to make that procedure urgent versus elective. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying. Well, that's what I was going to ask you, too, because I hear what Ann just talked about, which, were necessary procedures, you would imagine. But we know, and I've gotten several messages from folks on Facebook telling me that there are elective surgeries still going on, and some which could be lucrative, perhaps. I've heard cosmetic surgeries are actually still occurring. Some others that are happening that are definitely elective that are occurring, while there are folks who maybe have something that's necessary that's not happening. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And it's on a grander scale because people who, a mammogram, biopsy, those types of things, they don't generate much money. But you have somebody, and I'm just picking something out of the air now, but if you have somebody that needs a lumbar laminectomy, which is back surgery, that can cost $50,000, it's amazing how those people can just have their procedure designated emergent. You see my point?
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a claim going forward. I'll just tell everybody now. When I originally talked with you about this, I guess it was last month, you asked me, how do I see this, developing or evolving? And I told you that I thought the primary claims would be people who were in the hospital who were being put to the side while other people were being treated for COVID. Those people who were put to the side would be the ones who'd have the claims. I was wrong because I underestimated the problem entirely. You're going to have loads and loads, waves and waves of medical mistakes and medical malpractice claims because of situations like Ann has discussed, situations like what you and I have discussed in the past about people who need care and won't get it because they're put to the side, patients who have elective procedures who are going to have rushed procedures in the future when the demand finally kicks in and safety margins are disregarded. You're going to have surgeries on the wrong people, surgeries on the wrong body parts. I'm just telling you, and the only thing people can do to protect themselves is do the things you and I've talked about on the air in the past, which is ask questions, push back, don't let yourself be part of the assembly line medicine because it can get you killed.
Wow. All right, Clint, stay put. When we come back, more phone calls for you. Got some other comments from you that I've gotten from Facebook, and we'll continue our conversation. Final segment with malpractice attorney Clint Kelly. If you want to join us, 737-7587. I know a lot of people watching, and what he's talking about, it's important. We'll be right back.